There are stories of wealth. There are stories of success. And then there are stories that redefine what human potential looks like. Stories that begin in quiet, ordinary neighborhoods, with a child nobody notices, a dream nobody respects, and a future nobody predicts. This is one of those stories, because long before the world called him the Oracle of Omaha, long before billions flowed through his hands, long before newspapers printed his name with reverence, there was only a skinny kid with a paper route, and a fire inside him that refused to die. A fire built on curiosity, on hunger, on the belief that wealth isn't just about money. It's about discipline, patience, character, and vision. This is the journey of Warren Buffett, a boy who started with coins in his pocket and built an empire that changed the financial world forever. Warren Edward Buffett was born on August 30, 1930, in Omaha, Nebraska, during one of the most turbulent moments in American history. The Great Depression had just begun haunting families across the nation. Jobs had vanished. Banks had collapsed. People lined up for food, not opportunity. The air felt heavy with uncertainty, and dreams were a luxury most could not afford. Yet inside the Buffett household, something different was quietly taking shape. His father, Howard Buffett, was a stockbroker who would later become a U.S. congressman, a man of principle, honesty, and deep conviction. His mother, Layla, was intelligent and perceptive, but the financial pressures of the Depression weighed on her heavily. Some days, the money was so tight that the family skipped meals so the children could eat. Warren saw all of it: the tension, the sacrifice, the fragile balance between hope and survival. People believe success begins with talent or genius, but more often it begins with witnessing the brutal truth of life and deciding that your future will not be defined by scarcity. Warren's childhood wasn't glamorous. He wasn't born into luxury or privilege. He didn't have wealth passed down to him. What he did have was something far more valuable: a consuming curiosity about the world around him. Where other children saw toys, Warren saw numbers. Where other children played games, Warren created businesses. Where other children asked for allowance, Warren looked for opportunity. By age 5, he was already selling gum, Coca-Cola, and magazines door to door. Most kids dreaded the knock of rejection. Warren didn't. He embraced it. Every door that closed taught him resilience. Every sale that went through taught him reward. Every no pushed him toward the next yes. He wasn't just trying to make money. He was trying to understand money. He watched how people behaved, how they made decisions, how they spent and saved. He wasn't drawn to wealth for its glamour. He was fascinated by its logic. To him, money wasn't emotional. It was a puzzle, a system, a game of patience and precision. By the age of 11, Warren made his first stock investment. 11 years old. Most kids that age were trading baseball cards. Warren was trading shares. He purchased 3 shares of Citi's Service Preferred, one for himself and one for each of his sister Doris. The stock dropped almost immediately after he bought it. Panic would have consumed most adults, let alone a child. But Warren held on. He waited. When the stock finally rose slightly above his purchase price, he sold it for a tiny profit. But then something happened. Not long after he sold, the stock skyrocketed. It soared far above the price he had accepted. That moment burned into Warren's young mind a lesson he would carry for a lifetime. Impatience is expensive. Fear is expensive. Acting without discipline is expensive. He learned not just how to make money, but how to think about money. As Warren grew, the world around him kept shifting. The Depression eventually loosened its grip. America marched into World War II. New industries emerged and old ones faded. But no matter what changed, Warren's love for business stayed constant. At school, he wasn't the strongest athlete. He wasn't the class president. He wasn't the loudest kid in the room. He was the boy reading financial books while others played. He was the boy memorizing stock prices the way others memorize movie lines. He was the boy building the foundation of a future nobody could see. Not even him. While his peers imagined futures filled with traditional jobs or ordinary plans, Warren pictured something different. He dreamed of freedom. The freedom to choose his work, to control his time, to build something meaningful, to escape the unpredictability of the world that had shaped his childhood. And deep inside, he believed that the path to freedom wasn't luck or inheritance. It was knowledge. He devoured every book he could find at the Omaha Public Library. Business books, investment books, psychology, history, anything that revealed how people, companies, and markets behaved. His heroes weren't movie stars. They were entrepreneurs, authors, and financiers. Then one day, Warren discovered a book that changed everything. It was written by a man named Benjamin Graham, the intelligent investor. Graham's philosophy was simple but revolutionary. Invest in companies worth more than their price. Buy undervalued assets. Focus on fundamentals, not emotions. Avoid speculation. To young Warren, these ideas were lightning bolts. Clear, logical, rational. It felt like someone had handed him the missing key to a lock he'd been trying to open for years. But he didn't just read Graham's book. He studied it, absorbed it, lived it. He wanted to learn from the master himself. And so, he applied to Columbia Business School, one of the few places where Benjamin Graham actually taught. His friends didn't understand why he cared so deeply. His teachers didn't know what to make of him, but Warren knew what he was chasing, a blueprint for life. When he finally met Benjamin Graham, the encounter was everything he hoped for. Graham wasn't just a professor, he was a philosopher. A thinker, a man who believed that logic could triumph over chaos. Under Graham's mentorship, Warren's mind sharpened. His strategy evolved. His future came into focus. Yet even then, nobody expected the quiet kid from Omaha to build an empire. Nobody imagined that one day he would become one of the richest men in the world. Nobody foresaw the magnitude of what he was about to create. Because legends don't announce themselves, they grow in silence. They begin as children with questions. They turn into teenagers with ambition. And slowly they transform into adults with unstoppable purpose. Warren Buffett's early life wasn't the rise of a billionaire. It was the rise of a mindset shaped by hardship, discipline, and relentless curiosity. A mindset that would one day reshape global finance. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Success never arrives without struggle. And Warren's journey, from nothing to billions, was about to enter its most painful chapters. Warren Buffett's journey toward greatness did not begin with applause. It began with uncertainty, hesitation, and the heavy weight of a world that did not yet believe in him. After studying under Benjamin Graham, Warren returned to Omaha with more knowledge than most people twice his age. But knowledge alone does not guarantee opportunity. The world was different then. Investing wasn't seen as a noble profession. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't stable. Parents didn't dream of their children becoming investors. They dreamed of doctors, lawyers, engineers, people with predictable futures. To them, investing meant risk. And Warren's family, like many, had already seen enough risk during the Great Depression. So when Warren came home with bold ideas, passionate theories, and the desire to build his own investment practice, he wasn't greeted with fanfare. He was met with silence, concern, doubt. His mother, Layla, worried about him. His father, Howard, believed in him but still questioned whether such a path could sustain a family. His friends thought he was chasing something uncertain, something too fragile to depend on. And the truth is, Warren felt that pressure more than he admitted. He tried working regular jobs, but none of them fit him. He sold securities at his father's brokerage firm, but he wasn't passionate about selling. He wanted to build. He wanted to own. He wanted to invest with purpose, not persuade people to buy products they barely understood. But at that time, opportunities were limited. Nobody was looking for a young analyst from Nebraska. Wall Street didn't see him as special. No firms were lining up to hire him. He applied repeatedly, but rejection followed him like a shadow. Even Benjamin Graham, the mentor Warren admired more than anyone, initially turned him down for a job. The man whose ideas had shaped Warren's life didn't see room for him at his firm. Graham liked Warren, respected him, but business was business and the industry wasn't expanding fast enough. So Warren, the man destined to one day lead the world in investing, started his adult journey in the same place many people do, with doors closed in his face. It was a lonely, confusing time. He had brilliance but no platform, passion but no path, ambition but no direction, and for a moment, just a moment, he wondered if the world was right about him. He wasn't rich. He didn't come from power. He didn't have connections. He wasn't charismatic. He didn't look like a businessman. Maybe, just maybe, he was dreaming too big. Warren began questioning himself. Should he settle for a regular job? Should he become a teacher like some suggested? Should he let go of investing and follow a safer life? The weight of uncertainty sat on his chest every night. He wasn't afraid of failure, but he was afraid of wasting his life. Still deep inside, there was something stubborn, something unshakable. A quiet voice that said, "Stay patient, your time is coming." That voice guided him through those early struggles. Eventually, Benjamin Graham changed his mind and offered Warren a job. For most people, this would have felt like reaching the mountaintop. But for Warren, it was only the beginning, because success inside Graham's firm came with its own challenges. Warren learned fast. He worked long hours. He analyzed companies meticulously. But he didn't fit in with the rest of Wall Street. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He didn't drink or party. He didn't wear expensive suits. He didn't try to impress anyone. He was still the quiet kid from Omaha, and New York wasn't built for people like him. Coworkers underestimated him. They mocked the simplicity of his lifestyle. They laughed at his frugality. They didn't understand why he refused to indulge in luxuries everyone else chased. And Warren started to feel something unusual. The more he succeeded, the less he felt at home. He respected Graham deeply, but he didn't want Graham's life. He didn't want the noise. He didn't want the culture. He didn't want the constant competition and ego. He wanted simplicity, clarity, purpose, peace. And slowly, painfully, he realized that his dream wasn't to work for someone else, even someone he admired. His dream was to build his own path, but walking away from Graham's firm meant walking away from stability. Walking away meant stepping into uncertainty. Walking away meant risking everything. And Warren had something new to consider: a family. He had married Susan Thompson, a woman who saw something in him that even he sometimes struggled to see. She believed in his potential. She supported his dreams. And she trusted that he would find a way even when the path was invisible. But marriage brought responsibility. Responsibility brought pressure, and pressure brought doubt. How could he gamble with their future? How could he chase a dream that might never materialize? How could he take risks when he wasn't risking only his own life anymore? These questions followed him every step of the way. They kept him awake at night. They squeezed his heart with anxiety he rarely expressed. Warren wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of letting down the people he loved. Still, the voice inside him whispered again, "You were not meant to be ordinary." So he left New York, left Graham's firm, left the world he had worked so hard to enter. He returned to Omaha, back to where everything began, back to quiet streets, back to family, back to simplicity, and yet back to uncertainty. He had no firm, no clients, no momentum, just a man with a belief that he could build something from nothing. At first, nobody took him seriously. People didn't want to trust a 25-year-old with their money. They doubted his youth, his ideas, his unconventional philosophy. Some even told him he was wasting his life, that he should find a real job, that investing was gambling, that nobody would follow him. These opinions hurt. They weighed on him, not because he believed them, but because they came from people he knew, people he cared about. But Warren Buffett had something stronger than external validation. He had conviction. He believed in long-term value. He believed in patience. He believed in numbers, not emotions. He believed that if he stayed disciplined, the world would eventually notice. Yet discipline doesn't eliminate struggle. And Warren's early years in Omaha were filled with challenges few people ever saw. He had to convince investors one by one. He had to manage money with the fear of losing even a penny. He had to battle doubt, insecurity, and the pressure to succeed quickly. There were days when he felt overwhelmed, days when the market didn't cooperate, days when losses made him question everything. Days when he sat alone, wondering if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. But Warren kept going, one investor at a time, one decision at a time, one disciplined step at a time. And slowly, very slowly, the first small victories appeared. But before the rise could truly begin, Warren would have to endure moments far darker than these. Moments that would push him emotionally. Moments that would test his resilience. Moments that would break most people. Because every great journey has a chapter where the world seems determined to crush you. And Warren Buffett was about to enter his darkest season. There is a moment in every great life when the world stops applauding. When success fades into silence. When the road ahead turns into fog. And the only thing left is a person facing their own limits. For Warren Buffett, that moment arrived not once, but in waves. Waves of emotional struggle, financial pressure, and personal crisis. That carved scars deeper than any loss on a balance sheet ever could. Because long before Warren became a symbol of stability, he was a man overwhelmed by the weight of his own expectations. The first dark moment came quietly, almost invisibly. Warren had returned to Omaha, ready to build his partnership from scratch. He believed in himself, yes. He believed in his ideas, yes. But believing doesn't pay bills. Believing doesn't guarantee success. Believing doesn't silence the doubt that creeps in at 2 a.m. when the numbers refuse to make sense, and the world feels too heavy for one man to carry. Warren had convinced a handful of family and friends to invest, people he loved, people who trusted him, people who had given him their savings, their hopes, their faith, and with every dollar that entered his hands, the pressure wrapped around him tighter. He wasn't just investing money. He was holding lives, futures, dreams. A failure wouldn't just hurt him. It would hurt everyone who believed in him. That fear didn't paralyze him, but it haunted him. He checked and rechecked numbers late into the night. He reread financial statements until the ink blurred. He wrestled with decisions long after the world fell asleep. He wasn't afraid of risk. He was afraid of regret, but the pressure was only the beginning. Because Warren's life was about to collide with something he could never prepare for. The emotional unraveling of his marriage. Warren loved Susan deeply. She was his anchor, his balance, his greatest supporter. But their personalities were worlds apart. Warren lived inside numbers, inside spreadsheets, inside annual reports. His comfort zone was logic, data, routine. Susan lived inside emotion, inside music, inside empathy, inside human connection. She supported his dream, but she needed her own life too. A life filled with expression, independence, and meaning beyond finance. As Warren became more absorbed in building his partnerships, Susan began feeling increasingly isolated. She adored him, but she also felt suffocated by the very intensity that made him extraordinary. Warren didn't know how to fix it. He didn't know how to balance the world inside his mind with the world inside his home. He could read markets, but he struggled to read emotions. He could predict financial outcomes, but not the growing distance between him and his wife. And then, the moment came that shattered him. Susan told him she needed space, not because she didn't love him, but because she could no longer breathe inside the life they had built together. She moved out. To the outside world, Warren Buffett looked strong, confident, and unstoppable. But behind closed doors, he broke. The man who understood markets better than anyone. Didn't understand how to live alone, how to make breakfast, how to care for himself, how to fill the silence that now echoed through his home. He felt abandoned, guilty, and lost all at once. A storm no financial model could solve. His darkest moment wasn't a stock crash. It wasn't a failed investment. It wasn't a business collapse. It was emotional disorientation, a loneliness so deep it pierced through his carefully controlled world. And yet, through the heartbreak, something unexpected happened. Susan, even from a distance, still cared for him, still believed in him, still wanted him to succeed. She asked her close friend Astrid to check on him, help him, make sure he didn't drown in his own solitude. It wasn't romance at first. It wasn't a replacement. It was simply human kindness. But over time, Astrid became part of Warren's life, and eventually lived with him, not as a betrayal of Susan, but as part of an unconventional relationship that the world never fully understood. But that worked for them, in its own fragile way. Still, the emotional complexity weighed on Warren. He felt torn between two worlds. He felt guilty, confused, and often ashamed of how his personal life had unfolded, all while running partnerships worth millions, all while investors expected calm confidence, all while the world saw him as unshakable. But inside, he was anything but unshakable. Then came the business challenges, brutal lessons that tested his discipline in ways he never expected. There were investments that refused to move, partnership members who doubted his strategy, decisions that felt right but went wrong, nights when fear whispered that he might be exposed as nothing more than a lucky kid who got in over his head. There were days when the market punished him, days when losses pierced deeper than he admitted, days when the numbers refused to cooperate, and the weight of responsibility felt like a mountain crushing his chest. He hid his stress behind humor and a calm voice, but inside he fought a war none of his investors could see. And then came a defining moment, a moment that would push him into emotional chaos. He discovered Berkshire Hathaway. It was a struggling textile mill. Old, dying, uncompetitive, a business with no future. He bought shares thinking he could turn it around, but soon it became clear that this was a mistake, a serious one. His attachment to Berkshire wasn't logical. It was emotional, and emotion is the enemy of disciplined investing. As Berkshire consumed more capital, Warren realized he was trapped inside a decision he couldn't easily undo. A mistake that mocked him every time he looked at the numbers. He felt disappointment not in the business, but in himself. The man who preached rationality had been caught by irrational attachment. It was humbling, it was embarrassing, it was painful. There were moments when he looked at Berkshire and wondered if this was the decision that would stain his career forever. And behind all of this, behind the losses, behind the stress, behind the mistakes, was a growing fear he rarely admitted. What if he wasn't as great as people thought? What if he couldn't live up to his own legend? What if he had peaked too early? These thoughts haunted him like shadows trailing behind his every move. His darkest moments weren't explosive. They weren't dramatic. They were slow, quiet, heavy. They were the moments of waking up with anxiety, the moments of questioning his own judgment, the moments of feeling emotionally fractured, professionally challenged, and personally lost. But every great life has a breaking point, the moment when a person must decide, do I let the storm destroy me, or do I learn to walk through it? And Warren Buffett was about to rise, but the rise would not come from luck. It would come from pain, from discipline, from brutal self-awareness, and from the courage to rebuild his world piece by piece. The darkest nights are not the end. They are the birthplace of transformation. And Warren Buffett's transformation was about to change financial history forever. Every rise begins with a decision, not a loud one, not a dramatic one, but a quiet internal shift where a person finally whispers to themselves, I am not done yet. For Warren Buffett, that moment arrived after the storms of his darkest years. The loneliness, the emotional fracture, the mistakes, the doubt, he could have stayed there, buried beneath pressure, regret, and confusion. But Warren was not built to surrender. He was built to learn, to adapt, to transform. And his transformation began the moment he accepted the truth. Even the smartest people make mistakes. Even the strongest minds break at times. Even the most disciplined thinkers fall into emotional traps. But greatness is not perfection. Greatness is the ability to rise after imperfection. Warren emerged from his darkest moments with something he had never possessed before. Clarity, clarity about who he was, clarity about what he wanted, clarity about how he would spend the rest of his life. He realized that the world didn't need him to be Benjamin Graham 2.0. It didn't need another textbook investor. It needed Warren Buffett, with his own voice, his own philosophy, his own way. So he reinvented himself, slowly at first, quietly, deliberately. He began refining his investment strategy. He moved away from buying cheap companies and toward buying great companies at fair prices, companies with strong brands, strong leadership, strong futures. He stopped looking for businesses that were merely undervalued. He began searching for businesses that were unstoppable. And that shift, that evolution, became the foundation of his legendary style. But the rise didn't come only from strategy. It came from understanding his own strengths. Warren realized that he wasn't a trader. He wasn't a speculator. He wasn't a gambler. He was a collector of exceptional businesses, businesses that could grow without his constant supervision, businesses that could compound value for decades, businesses that gave him peace. The more he leaned into this identity, the more unstoppable he became, and it all began with one bold decision, one that would shape the rest of his life. He decided to take full control of Berkshire Hathaway. Not the failing textile division, not the dying operations, but the company itself. As a holding vehicle for the businesses he truly wanted. It was genius. It was visionary. It was completely unconventional. People didn't understand it at first. Why take over a struggling textile mill? Why pour money into something guaranteed to lose? Why not cut his losses and walk away? Because Warren saw something the world couldn't see. Berkshire Hathaway wasn't a textile company. It was a shell, a structure, a legal container that he could transform into an empire. The rise began the moment he stopped trying to save the textile business and started using Berkshire as a launching pad. With Berkshire officially under his control, the next phase of his rise began, the hunt for greatness. Warren went searching for companies that fit his new criteria, businesses with durable advantages, businesses with loyal customers, businesses run by honest, talented managers, businesses that would thrive not just today, but 10, 20, even 50 years into the future. And then he found it, the company that marked the beginning of his ascent, American Express. A scandal had shaken the company. The market panicked, investors fled, the stock plummeted, but Warren didn't see danger. He saw opportunity. He analyzed the situation not with fear, but with logic. Did customers still trust AMX? Yes. Did merchants still depend on it? Yes. Was the scandal permanent? No. Was the company still an American icon? 100 times yes. So while the world ran from American Express, Warren ran toward it. He invested heavily, confidently, boldly, and when American Express recovered, which it did, people finally saw what he had always been capable of, the ability to see value where others see disaster. That was the first major victory in Warren's rise. But it was only the beginning. Next came a company that would cement his reputation, the Washington Post. Warren met Katharine Graham, a woman leading one of America's most respected newspapers. Through turbulent times, most investors ignored the company. They believed print media was too unstable, too risky, too outdated. But Warren saw something deeper, a brand trusted by millions, a management team committed to excellence, a company with influence far beyond its market price. He invested. He supported Katharine. He believed when others hesitated, and that investment multiplied exponentially. Financially, professionally, and personally, Katharine Graham became one of Warren's closest lifelong friends. Their relationship shaped his worldview in ways profits never could. As Berkshire grew, Warren's confidence grew, his circle grew, his influence grew. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was ascending, but perhaps the most important moment of the rise was the day he embraced a principle that would form the core of his empire: buy businesses, not stocks. It sounds simple, but in that simplicity lies genius. Warren stopped thinking like an investor. He started thinking like an owner. He wasn't buying ticker symbols. He wasn't buying trends. He wasn't buying market hype. He was buying real companies, with real leaders, and real futures. That clarity opened the door to one of the greatest acquisitions in business history, C.S. Candies. On paper, the company didn't look extraordinary. He became a mentor to thousands, a guide to millions, a symbol of patience in a world addicted to urgency. And as Berkshire Hathaway expanded, as the partnerships thrived, as his investments became legendary, the world finally realized Warren Buffett wasn't rising. He was redefining what rising looks like. The kid who sold soda door to door was now becoming a titan. The young man who doubted himself was now becoming a teacher. The investor who once stood in the shadow of Benjamin Graham was now becoming a legend of his own making. But the rise was far from over, because Warren wasn't just building success. He was building an empire that would change industries, an empire that would outlast trends, an empire that would stretch across decades, touch millions of lives, and redefine the very meaning of wealth. And that empire was about to take shape in the most extraordinary chapter yet. Success does not arrive as a single moment. It doesn't knock on the door with trumpets and applause. It arrives quietly, in the form of decisions, discipline, and years of relentless consistency. For Warren Buffett, the journey from steady rise to undeniable success was not a leap, but a compounding of small, brilliant steps, taken again and again, year after year, with a patience almost superhuman. And this is where his story transforms, not from struggle to comfort, but from comfort to command, where he steps fully into his power, not as an investor, but as one of the greatest business minds of all time. There is a moment in a person's journey when momentum takes over, when the years of grinding, learning, and waiting begin to pay off. For Warren, that moment began the day he embraced Berkshire Hathaway. Not as a burden, but as a vehicle, a vessel for greatness, a platform for empire building, a canvas on which he would paint one of the most extraordinary financial stories in history. The textile mills may have been dying, but Warren's vision was only beginning to live. He slowly phased out the failing business, not with bitterness, but with wisdom, accepting that the future of Berkshire lay not in looms and factories, but in ownership, ownership of companies, ownership of brands, ownership of America's economic pillars. And so Berkshire Hathaway transformed, not overnight, not with dramatic announcements, but with quiet acquisitions, strategic partnerships, and decisions that seemed small at the time, yet would ripple through decades. Success began with See's Candies, the model for what Warren called a dream business. A business with a moat, a business with love, a business where customers didn't ask for the price. They asked for the experience. But success expanded with something even bigger, GEICO. For most investors, insurance was dull, complicated, unattractive. But Warren saw what others overlooked. Insurance wasn't a business. It was a machine for generating capital. Every premium a customer paid was money Berkshire could invest, long before it ever needed to be paid out in claims. It was leverage, not borrowed, but earned, and Warren understood it better than anyone. His mentor, Benjamin Graham, had once introduced him to GEICO. But now Warren wasn't just learning. He was leading. When GEICO struggled, Warren didn't run. He doubled down. He invested with conviction, confidence, and clarity, and GEICO became one of the foundational pillars of Berkshire Hathaway. Its float, the money held before claims were paid, became the fuel for Warren's most powerful investments. The world saw insurance. Warren saw ammunition. And with that ammunition, he built success after success. Next came a wave of acquisitions that changed the trajectory of Berkshire forever. Nebraska Furniture Mart. Warren admired founder Rose Blumkin, a Russian immigrant with razor-sharp instincts and unshakable honesty. She didn't graduate high school. She didn't learn business from books. She learned it from life. Warren loved that. He trusted character more than degrees, integrity more than credentials. He bought her company because he believed in her. And the store grew into a retail giant, one of the most profitable in America. Then came Coca-Cola. By the late 1980s, Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink. It was a global symbol, a taste, a memory, a part of people's lives. But after a temporary stumble in stock price, Wall Street panicked. Warren did not. He saw brand power. He saw emotional loyalty. He saw a company that could sell happiness in a bottle. So he made one of the boldest investments of his life. He placed billions into Coca-Cola stock. And that investment became one of the greatest in Berkshire Hathaway's history. Not because of luck, but because Warren understood something fundamental. When the world falls out of love with a great company, that is the moment a disciplined mind finds opportunity. Coca-Cola didn't just make Warren money. It made him a legend. By now, the world had started paying attention. Warren Buffett was no longer the quiet man from Omaha. He was becoming a symbol of stability, a voice of wisdom, a guardian of rational thinking. But success brings something unusual. An audience. People wanted to know his secrets, his strategies, his thoughts, his philosophy. So Warren began writing annual letters to shareholders, letters that became required reading for business schools, investors, and leaders across the globe. He didn't write with ego. He didn't write to impress. He wrote to teach, to guide, to help the world think more clearly. And through these letters, Warren revealed something profound. Success is not about genius. It is about temperament. The ability to remain calm when others panic, the discipline to wait when others rush, the humility to admit mistakes, the courage to think independently. These traits made Warren not just successful, but unstoppable. As Berkshire Hathaway grew, Warren's circle of trusted leaders grew with it. He empowered talented people to run their businesses. He didn't interfere. He didn't micromanage. He chose managers not for what they knew, but for who they were. He believed in honesty, transparency, integrity, and in return, Berkshire became a magnet for the very best businesses in America. Soon, companies across industries wanted to join Warren, because joining Berkshire meant joining stability, joining longevity, joining a culture of trust. The empire expanded. BNSF Railway, Duracell, Fruit of the Loom, Benjamin Moore, Dairy Queen, NetJets, and dozens more, each company different, each company unique. But all united under one philosophy: run well, think long-term, protect the brand, protect the culture, protect the customer. Warren wasn't building a portfolio. He was building a nation of companies grounded in American values and global vision. The success journey also brought a new relationship into focus: his partnership with Charlie Munger. Charlie wasn't just a friend. He was a mirror, a challenger, a co-architect of the Berkshire Empire. Where Warren saw numbers, Charlie saw psychology. Where Warren saw value, Charlie saw quality. Where Warren saw opportunity, Charlie saw long-term potential. Together, they became one of the most powerful intellectual partnerships in the history of business. Charlie pushed Warren to evolve, to focus not just on undervaluation, but on excellence. He helped Warren refine the philosophy that would define the empire: better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. And Warren listened. He grew, he shifted, he upgraded his strategy, he became the version of himself that the world now admires. Success is not solo. Success is forged through the right partnerships. And Warren and Charlie's partnership was one for the ages. But success didn't shield Warren from challenges. Markets crashed, companies faltered, economies weakened, the dot-com bubble burst, the Great Recession shook the world. Pandemics, wars, political shifts. Chaos became a constant, but Warren remained calm, always rational when tech companies soared irrationally. Warren refused to buy. People mocked him, called him outdated, called him slow, but he stayed true to himself. And when the bubble burst, those same critics returned in silence. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, Warren didn't hide, he stepped forward. He invested in companies on the brink: Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, General Electric. Not recklessly, but courageously. While the world panicked, Warren became a lifeline. And those decisions made billions for Berkshire Hathaway and restored confidence to a shaken economy. He wasn't just successful. He was reliable, a rare force of calm in a world of uncertainty. But success is not only measured in money. It is measured in impact, in character, in legacy. As Berkshire's value soared, Warren made a decision that shocked the world. He announced he would give away over 99% of his wealth during his lifetime or upon his death. Not to family, not to prestige, but to causes that improve the world. He partnered with Bill and Melinda Gates to create the Giving Pledge, a movement asking billionaires to commit most of their wealth to humanity. Dozens joined, then hundreds. Warren proved that success is not accumulation. Success is contribution. His philanthropy wasn't a public show. It was a duty, a responsibility, a belief that money has meaning only when it helps lives beyond your own. As the years passed, success shaped Warren, but it never changed him. He still lived in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958. Still ate simple. This was not just success. This was mastery, a lifetime of disciplined thinking, turned into a legacy of unimaginable scale. But the journey wasn't finished, because success is one thing. Building an empire is another. And in the next chapter, Warren's empire stands revealed. Its size, its influence, its global reach. A testament to what one man can create when he refuses to drift and chooses instead to shape his destiny. Today, when the world speaks the name Warren Buffett, it does not speak of a man, it speaks of an empire, an idea, a philosophy, a force that has shaped modern capitalism more deeply than almost any corporation or individual alive. But empires are not built in noise. They are built in discipline. They are built in quiet rooms, with quiet decisions made by someone who understands the mathematics of patience and the art of long-term thinking. Warren Buffett's empire, Berkshire Hathaway, is unlike anything the world has ever seen. It isn't a tech giant. It isn't a retail chain. It isn't a manufacturer. It is a universe of businesses, each orbiting around one gravitational center: Warren's philosophy of value. And today this universe is vast. Walk through America, and you will see Berkshire Hathaway everywhere, even if the name itself stays hidden in the shadows. You see it in the appliances people buy at Nebraska Furniture Mart. You see it in the trains thundering across the country, delivering grain, coal, goods, and dreams. Because BNSF Railway, one of the largest freight rail networks in the world, belongs to Berkshire. You see it in the battery powering a child's toy, Because Duracell is Berkshire. You see it in someone ordering ice cream after a long day. Because Dairy Queen is Berkshire. You see it in the insurance protecting millions of American families. Because GEICO, one of the most recognized insurers in the nation, is Berkshire, and beyond these, the empire stretches into energy. Pipelines, power, wind farms, and electrical systems that keep entire regions running. Berkshire Hathaway Energy, a giant in infrastructure and utilities, powers millions of homes across the United States. This is the empire today, woven into daily life, so seamlessly that most people never realize how many moments of their ordinary day are touched by Warren Buffett's decisions. But Berkshire is not just a collection of companies. It is a philosophy in motion. It is proof that businesses thrive when leaders trust people, when managers are empowered, and micromanagement is avoided, when integrity is valued more than quarterly earnings, when long-term thinking is treated as a competitive advantage. Under Warren's leadership, Berkshire became a safe harbor in a world of economic storms. When markets fluctuate, when fear spreads, when uncertainty rises, people look to Berkshire like a lighthouse, not because it is flashy, but because it is reliable, not because it promises quick profits, but because it promises disciplined thinking. This stability made Berkshire Hathaway one of the most admired companies on earth, a fortress built not from steel or concrete, but from trust, and the numbers tell a story so staggering that even experts struggle to comprehend it. A single share of Berkshire Hathaway, just one, was worth $19 when Warren took control. Today, one Class A share trades at hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than the price of a luxury car, more than the price of a house. A symbol of compounding so relentless that it redefined financial possibility. People don't buy Berkshire to get rich quickly. They buy it to participate in a lifetime of disciplined decisions made by a man who refused to follow the crowd. Warren often says, "My favorite holding period is forever." And Berkshire reflects that truth. It is not a company built for trends. It is a company built for centuries, but an empire is not measured only by money. It is measured by influence. Today, Warren Buffett is not just an investor. He is a global teacher. His annual meetings, the Woodstock for capitalists, draw tens of thousands of people. From dozens of countries, students come to learn. CEOs come for wisdom. Ordinary people come just to hear him speak. Because Warren does what few wealthy leaders ever do. He simplifies the complex. He makes finance human. He tells the truth. People trust him because he never hides behind jargon. He never pretends to be more than he is. He never speaks with ego, only with clarity and humility. His success has created an aura, but his personality has created a bridge. He is a billionaire who feels familiar, approachable, understandable, in a world obsessed with speed. Warren champions patience, in a world obsessed with speculation. He champions fundamentals, in a world obsessed with appearing brilliant. He champions common sense, and that is why his empire extends far beyond Berkshire Hathaway's balance sheet. It extends into classrooms, into families, into future generations, learning how to build wealth, how to manage money, how to think clearly in a noisy, emotional world. But even the greatest empire must face the question every giant inevitably encounters. What happens when Warren Buffett steps away? For years, people speculated about succession. They wondered who would replace him, who could possibly fill the shoes of one of the greatest financial minds the world has ever known. But Warren prepared for this long before the world asked. He chose leaders carefully. He groomed them quietly. He built a culture that could outlive him, a system that did not rely on charisma or personality, but on process, discipline, and trust. Today, Berkshire has strong successors in place. Leaders trained under Warren and Charlie Munger. Leaders who share the same long-term philosophy. Leaders who will guide the empire long after Warren's final annual meeting. Warren never wanted Berkshire to be a monument to himself. He wanted it to be a machine that could keep compounding for generations after he is gone. That is the true brilliance of what he built. He built something that can outlive him. And yet, even as Berkshire Hathaway stands tall, even as the world admires the empire, Warren's life today remains astonishingly simple. He still lives in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958. A modest home, with no security gate, no marble floors, No luxury wings. He still eats McDonald's breakfasts, still drinks Coca-Cola with childlike delight, still goes to Dairy Queen, still reads for hours every day, still plays bridge with passion, still lives like a man untouched by fortune. When people ask him why, he smiles and says, "I like my life, why would I need more?" In that simplicity lies the greatest truth. Of Warren Buffett's empire, the empire exists not because Warren wanted wealth, but because Warren wanted freedom. Freedom to think, freedom to choose, freedom to live with purpose, freedom to give without limits. His empire is vast, but his life is grounded. His influence is global, but his habits are local. His wealth is unmatched, but his heart remains human. This is Berkshire Hathaway today. This is the empire Warren built, a monument to discipline, a testament to patience, a legacy still unfolding, but the empire is not the final chapter. Because behind the companies, behind the wealth, behind the success, there is something deeper, the lessons, the wisdom, the philosophy Warren wants the world to carry forward, long after he is gone. And that final chapter reveals the man not as a billionaire, but as a teacher, a sage, a guide for generations. Legacy is not measured by what a person earns. It is measured by what they teach, what they change, and what they leave behind in the hearts and minds of others. And Warren Buffett, a man who began with nothing more than curiosity and determination, has built a legacy that stretches far beyond the numbers printed on Berkshire Hathaway's balance sheets. His legacy lives in classrooms, in investment philosophies, in business ethics, in philanthropy, in families learning how to save, in young people discovering discipline, in leaders rediscovering humility. His legacy is wisdom. Not complicated wisdom, but simple wisdom, delivered with clarity, humor, and truth. The world has called him many things: the Oracle of Omaha, the sage of the Midwest, the greatest investor of all time. But Warren never cared about titles. He cared about principles, and those principles define his legacy more than any fortune ever could. One of his greatest lessons is this: investing is not about money, it's about temperament. Warren taught the world that the stock market is a place where the impatient transfer their money to the patient, where emotion destroys performance, where fear and greed are enemies of reason. He taught that intelligence alone is not enough. A high IQ cannot protect a person from bad decisions. If their temperament collapses under pressure, he taught that staying calm, when the world is shaking, is the true edge that separates the great from the ordinary. And this is not just a lesson for investing. It is a lesson for life. When things fall apart, when plans fail, when chaos spreads, temperament determines the outcome. Warren's legacy is emotional discipline, another lesson. Always stay within your circle of competence. Warren showed the world that greatness does not come from knowing everything. It comes from knowing what you truly understand and avoiding everything else. If he didn't understand a business, he didn't invest. If he didn't understand a trend, he ignored it. If he didn't understand a technology, he waited. He did not chase hype. He did not chase crowds. He did not pretend to be an expert in everything. This humility, the humility to admit limits, is a cornerstone of his power. He taught the world that expertise is not about being limitless, but about knowing your boundaries. That lesson alone has saved millions of people from financial ruin and emotional exhaustion. Another pillar of his legacy: reputation takes decades to build and seconds to destroy. Warren built an empire not through manipulation, but through trust. He believed that integrity is the real currency of success. He believed that a leader should be transparent, honest, and accountable. He told his managers, "Lose money and I will understand. Lose reputation and I will be ruthless." He meant it. Reputation is the foundation upon which entire empires rest. Warren's legacy is a reminder that character is not a luxury. It is a requirement. But perhaps the most profound truth Warren taught the world is this: the greatest investment you can make is in yourself. Not in stocks, not in real estate, not in businesses, in your own mind, your own habits, your own discipline. He believed that reading, thinking, and learning compound just like money compounds. He believed that wisdom is the highest return asset on earth. He read thousands of books. He devoured knowledge every day. He sharpened his thinking until it became one of the sharpest tools in modern history. Warren proved that a person's external success is merely a reflection of their internal preparation. Invest in your skills, your understanding, your perspective, your emotional strength, and life expands in ways money alone can never explain. That belief, that devotion to lifelong learning, is a cornerstone of his legacy. And then there is the idea that shocked the financial world and redefined philanthropy. Wealth has meaning only when it helps others. Warren Buffett could have kept every dollar he made. He could have passed down billions to future generations. He could have built monuments, private islands, and symbols of personal achievement, but he chose another path. He chose giving. He decided to donate over 99% of his fortune to causes that lift humanity: health, education, equality, opportunity. He didn't give for glory. He didn't give for legacy. He gave because he believed it was right. He created the Giving Pledge, inviting billionaires around the world to commit more than half their wealth to charitable causes, not as an obligation, but as a promise to humanity. Warren's legacy is generosity without ego. Another profound lesson: success is not measured by money, but by the people who truly love you. As Warren grew older, after decades of awards, praise, and global admiration, someone once asked him, "How should a person measure their life?" His answer was simple: "If you reach my age and the people you love actually love you back, then you are successful." Not millions, not billions, not status, not wealth, love, loyalty, relationships. These, he said, are the true scorecards of life. His legacy is a reminder that human connection outweighs financial achievement. Another lesson Warren gifted the world: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. He credited others: Charlie Munger, Rose Blumkin, Katharine Graham, Bill Gates, managers across Berkshire, as essential parts of his journey. He never claimed brilliance for himself. He always recognized the contributions of others. His success was never solitary. He believed in collaboration. He believed in trust. He believed in finding good people and letting them shine. And that philosophy built an empire with thousands of leaders who today run companies the Buffett way. His legacy is teamwork grounded in mutual respect. But one lesson rises above them all. A lesson rooted not in finance, but in purpose. Do what you love, and do it with your whole heart. Warren Buffett wakes up excited to work, not because he needs money, not because he needs power, but because he loves the game of allocating capital. He loves thinking. He loves reading. He loves making decisions that shape businesses. He often says, "I tap dance to work." To him, joy is the true measure of success. If you love what you do, you will endure the setbacks. You will persist through struggle. You will never run out of energy. Warren's legacy is passion. Passion that becomes purpose. And finally, Warren Buffett's life teaches one last truth. A truth so simple and so powerful that it defines his entire philosophy. Life is a long game. Play it wisely. Do not rush. Do not panic. Do not chase noise. Do not measure yourself against others. Build steadily. Save consistently. Think long-term. Surround yourself with good people. Avoid unnecessary drama. Protect your reputation. Work with purpose. Love deeply. Give generously. Stay humble. Stay curious. Stay patient. This is Warren Buffett's real legacy, not an empire of companies, not a fortress of wealth, not a mountain of achievements, but a roadmap for living a meaningful, disciplined, fulfilling life. A roadmap built not from genius, but from clarity, not from privilege, but from perseverance, not from perfection, but from lifelong learning. Warren Buffett's legacy is not just the story of a man who made billions. It is the story of a man who mastered himself and through that mastery taught the world how to build not just wealth, but wisdom. In the end, Warren Buffett's story is not about money. It is about possibility, the possibility that an ordinary life can rise to extraordinary heights. Through discipline, patience, and purpose, he was not born into wealth. He was not gifted privilege. He was not handed success. He built it. One decision at a time, one lesson at a time, one quietly determined day at a time. His journey reminds us that greatness does not require brilliance, only clarity, not speed, only direction.